Conscious Conversation, episode 30, with the usual duo, Craig and Chet. How you doing?
I'm good, man.
What do you think of that introduction?
I like it. Straight in, no sauce. Just beans.
Someone was saying to me that you use the same introduction. I was like, well, I don't know how else to start it, but that's for you guys. That's for the person that complained about the introduction.
Yeah, it's a bit spicy. We'll have to sing. We'll sing next time.
Well, we've got that little jingle that you made.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, we haven't... Have we decided which one we want?
I think so. I need to message him, see what he's saying.
Yeah, I think we need to decide which one we want, and then we'll stick it in as the introduction, and then we'll see how many people complain about it
being the same.
Being the same
every episode.
Yeah. So what were we just talking about before we started?
So many things.
Ooh, what's happened there? There's a lot of spikes.
Laughter.
That was our laughter. Yeah. So yeah, what were we talking about before?
Attenborough.
There was that, but you said about your Kundalini yoga training.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you were just telling me how it was. You did an hour and a half.
Yeah, man, it's quite a brutal class. It was a tough one. Didn't go easy on him. I think knowing that it was going to be quite experienced people with yoga, I chose a really tough kriya purposely. And yeah, they recognised that it was a tough one at the end, which was good. You know, sort of get feedback from people who can push themselves towards the deeper end. But it's not one that I would give to beginners to start with, you know, lengthwise and how long you hold the poses for, and a lot of breath of fire. So you'd be in camel pose where you're leaning back, your hands are on your ankles, and you 3 minutes, come out of it, long breathing for 2, then back into it, shoulder stands, 3 minutes. Like it was brutal, but it was good. And the whole idea with the Kundalini yoga is you're working with your energy bodies, so you're revitalizing them, you're refreshing. This one was lower triangle to higher triangle kriya, which is about taking your lower energies, your lower chakras, and bringing the energy up, which I thought was quite apt given the times and people's frustrations and angers or fears, to transform all that energy, bring it up to the top, get it transformed. So it was a tough one, but yeah, I loved it. I loved teaching it. And you know when you're doing those things and you're like, this is for me, I'm glad I'm in it. So I've taught on Zoom and with my classes, but also with my breathwork group. So this was the first one in person. It was like, for me as well, finding this path through Kundalini yoga, like it's what I want to provide as a service. Maybe in contrast to what we were talking about in the last podcast we did together, about not necessarily going out your way to help in what you think is required, which, you know, there's an element of that which is needed, but doing it through your path. So you might have a certain set of skills, like Mr. Liam Neeson, you have a certain set of skills that you're very good at, but you might think I need to help in that sort of format that you're not familiar with, and you actually don't have a natural affinity with it, and it doesn't work for you. But when you find what it is that you're naturally good at, and you can turn that into the helping mechanism. And this for me was like great. Loved it. Loved all of it. Yeah,
so an hour and a half of intense breathing and then meditation?
Yeah, each kriya. So the kriyas, you've always got your warm-up, then you've got your movement set, your mantra, your relaxation, which is part of it, your meditation, which is part of it, and that's why it kind of covers the whole 8 limbs of yoga within it. So you've got all these elements, and that's why I like it as well. Like, you're not getting away from mantra and you're not getting away from meditation if you're doing a Kundalini yoga session, which I really love about it, because we spoke about it prior, haven't we, how we think that that's something that can be lacking in certain sessions or specific people's outlook to what they like about yoga. And with the kriyas, they're set, everything's set, so it's not me saying, right, do this as such, and now putting this movement with that. Like, they're all done. All you are is the teacher. So it's even more practice of removing ego, removing of what I want, the things I like or don't like, getting it out and going, this is what the teacher's transmitted. It moves through me into the class. So it's never mine, which is great. But yeah, you've got all those elements in it, and you have to take, while you're there, you know, you might as well go into them and give it a full effort.
Yeah, so tying in with what you were teaching on the weekend, that book that you lent to me, what was it called again?
The Human Intellect, or The Battle of the Human Intellect, something along those lines.
It was to do with...
the fall of the human intellect.
The fall of the human intelligence.
Intelligence.
Yeah, because I think he defines the difference between... In the first preface, or preface, how you pronounce it, he defines the difference between intellect and intelligence, and how intellect is based on what you've accumulated, and intelligence is how you are able to process that. I think. Am I getting it right?
That sounds about right. It's like the intelligence is how well you can use something. Like, you don't have to be intelligent to be smart, is the way that I kind of always try and remember it. Like, your intellect is the amass, the accumulation, and that's where people think that they're clever because they know so much knowledge or they've remembered so many things, essentially. And that's intellect, while the intelligence is the use of these things, and not even those things. Like, you can be, like Sadhguru talks about, never reading a book or learning something specific, but you're intelligent. And this is why Jordan Peterson says it very well when he's saying you should separate wisdom from being smart, because they're nowhere connected, they're nowhere together at all, but people think that they're wise if they're smart. Or you can say something intelligent and go, oh, you're very wise, but it doesn't mean it is. It's just our misunderstanding of it. Like, accumulation of knowledge is nowhere near wisdom, because wisdom, you can find that through intuition, through something in being in the present moment. Something from wisdom can come out. Your awareness of it and your application of it is the wisdom, not the intelligence that's recalled it. Yeah,
the wisdom is definitely related to the experience, which is definitely more fundamental than reading about it in a book. I think I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but a few weeks ago, when my monk friend, the two monks that were from the UK, were in the UK celebrating the anniversary of the temple that I go to, he asked me a really interesting question, and I'm probably going to butcher it again, but I think he said, what's the difference between education and, I think, intelligence, or education and learning? Education and learning. And I was like, and he goes, do you think education is needed, or which one do you think is more important? And I said, well, both of them are relevant, but education will give you well, this is what my definition was. It will give you a sort of a general understanding of everything. You know, for example, if you need to learn about biology, maths, science, etc., whatever, it's understanding everything, giving you a general perspective on everything. But then learning is going that one step deeper and really understanding it. And the only way you understand something is, again, if you apply experience to create wisdom and to actually experience what you're learning as well. And the best medical the field to look at that in is something like medicine. I think they've got it perfectly right how they teach people, where the way they teach their students in university is, I think it's about 30-40% theory, and then the rest of it is all just practical, and you learn hands-on about the anatomy of the body, about physiology, understanding symptoms and stuff. You learn hands-on being in hospital, and I think that is a great way of teaching people. And that's why do you think so many doctors are, there's a good ratio of passes in their degree, because of how everything is all application based. Whereas something like I studied zoology, we were studying, and we do have animals in the UK, but we were studying about elephants and hyenas and stuff like that, and chimpanzees, and we don't really have those creatures in the wild in the UK. So for me, I was always rebellious, asking my lecturers, saying that it's pointless for you to, as much as I respect them and we used to have a great relationship, I used to say it's kind of pointless for us to learn about these creatures because we're not there. We're reading from a book, or we're reading from watching a video. We're not there present, learning from the animals hands-on. And anyone that's ever ordered pet knows that it's a completely different experience when you're there with the animal compared to reading about it in a book or something. So yeah, something like taking care of the animal. You can read about it, this is how you're supposed to do it, but when you have to go out there and do it, it's like, okay, now you have to do the dirty work, and you have to observe. And if you want to teach your dog how to not shit on the carpet, to shit in a particular area, you have to go through the experience of teaching it. So it's a massive difference between education and learning. Learning, I think, is through the job process. How would you agree? Or
yeah, I'd say so. I'd say the learning is more important than education, depending on what kind of life you're after. But again, like there's a level of trust that we have in our education. I mean, it might be taking the conversation in a different direction, but those who educate us and what they educate us for is not a fair playing field, because we're educated by a system that wants us to play a part in the system.
Be a cog.
To be a cog. That's what our education is for. We've all seen the videos on Instagram of the people on the conveyor belts. That's exactly what it is. So it's being aware of what education, and it's not saying it's wrong, as you say. If you want to get into medicine, go to the medicine school. If you want to be educated in how to be an actor, go to acting school, whatever. The education will come for it. I suppose I'm just thinking of the general consensus of what education is in the school system. But if it's by our choice what we want to be educated in, you already got a foot up. If you want to be educated in something, you will learn way better. The education and the learning will come together then, because I'm so interested. Basically, you're aware. It's like the things that you remember, because you were switched on, you were more aware at that point. And learning is a whole process of being aware. Something Krishnamurti talks really well about is that just being open to learn, and that's where you're listening. You're not concluding, and you don't do that if you're actually learning. Not sat there remembering these words, but you're learning. It means you're in a state of openness. You're not concluding, or you're asking questions like, "Why is that?" and da da da. But not to prove something within yourself. It's got wonder involved with it. I'm curious, so I'm gonna learn. Not like, oh shit, I've got to do this exam and I need to learn and remember these questions. It's a whole different thing. But learning, I think, is a much more valuable skill than education, because you don't really need that education to live a happy life. In fact, the more that we remember, or what we get told from a level of education, the more tangled we get up in our own heads. The more stuff we go out to seek and know, generally, the harder it gets. And then it gets harder to learn when you solidify the path that you think is right. Oh, but no, this teacher said that, and that's, my personality goes with that, so this is how it should be. Yeah. You can stop learning then, and your keyhole gets narrower and narrower of what you're looking at to... supposed to open up to life. Learning will always be all of it. Yeah, no borders.
Have you heard of Sir Ken Robinson? At one point he had the most watched TED Talk on the whole TED Talks platform, and he was beaten by a guy who was a live DJ. Do you know, the one that makes the noises himself? Some Australian guy, but it was a good video. But nevertheless, Ken Robinson, he created a video called "Why or How School Kills Creativity," and I remember in my second year of university of studying, I think I was studying molecules to microbes or something. It was microbiology. Yeah, microbiology I was studying as a module, and I was really going to be shit in the exam. Like I had 2 exams back to back. I had a parasitology exam and I had this one. And I decided to focus on the parasitology one because it was something I was interested in. So I just thought, screw it, I'll just sacrifice the other one and then do whatever I can. I managed to get through the 40% of the questions, which were all the multiple choice ones, fine. It was the 60%, which was the 2 essays that I struggled with, because I was like, I don't know any of this shit. And I chose, instead of to walk out of the exam early, I chose to sit there and I wrote an essay about how school kills creativity. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to be that person that walks out early in the exam, so I'll just sit here. And I wrote paragraphs. I must have filled up 4 or 5 pages, which I've never done in any of my exams in the past. And I referenced Ken Robinson. And I said, I apologized to the lecturer and said, I apologize for not paying attention in your lectures, but I felt as though you were just literally talking to us. And this is not taking anything away from you in terms of your academic achievements and stuff, but it's very monotonous, and how the lecture theatre is supposed to be a theatre, it's supposed to be a performance. And I just felt like, I probably could have learned more about it. And it was fascinating because in the first year I studied the same module, but it was more about the genetic side, which was deeply interesting to figure out why you have blue eyes and why someone has brown eyes, and how you link it back to ancestry and everything. It was deeply fascinating. And so I said to him this, and I didn't want to obviously point fingers at him and say, you're the issue, but I said, I think the system needs to change, because people like me who don't do well, I do well in exams if I'm put under the pressure and I have to remember stuff, but the instant I walk out the exam, I forget like 70%, 80% of the stuff instantly, because it's like, now it's no use to me. So it goes back into the recycle bin, like a computer analogy. It goes into the recycle bin and then you empty the recycle bin. So I wrote about Ken Robinson and said his video, How School Kills Creativity, was fascinating, because I was that young kid with ADHD or ADD. I had ADD, so I wasn't that hyperactive. But to tell someone that, look, this energy that you've got, it's troublesome or it's causing problems, you need to sit there, put your head down and just focus. It does really make a person feel compartmentalized. Like you feel restricted. And I remember as a kid, I would finish all my work, so all my reports to my parents would say, your child's very bright, but he just distracts other people. But then what they failed to write was, your child's bright, he finishes all his work, and then he distracts other people because he's bored. He wants something else to work on. And again, I'm not trying to defend myself or saying, I was a good kid, but my actions were, again, if I look back, my actions as a child, a lot of the stuff, the anger, the frustration, was because I couldn't release this energy. I was so fascinated by the world, by exploration, by wildlife, by nature, which will tie into our second topic, which is the David Attenborough documentary that came out on Netflix. But I was fascinated by all of that, and I wanted to know why and how things work, but the way the schooling system worked. Because when you're young, you think being an adult must be amazing because you get to explore all this freedom and you can drive a car and you can go wherever you want and just see the world openly. But when you get there, you start to realize that actually they just want you to do exactly what you did as a kid, but now in a grander scale, and you've got more pressure on you to meet these deadlines. And no wonder suicides are high for kids in university and higher education. It's because all this pressure is put onto you. And I was fortunate that I was one of those kids that did well under the pressure, generally speaking, but other kids didn't. You know, a lot of kids really struggle. I knew a guy, funny enough, he was in the same year as me, and he was really smart when it came to thinking outside the box, when it came to like writing essays and stuff. But it was the fact that he had to write in such a rigid format, and that he just wouldn't get the grades that he deserved. So he was terrible in exams. He was okay in essays, doing coursework and essays, but in terms of exams, he was shockingly bad. So I did feel for people. So I wasn't just talking from my own experience, I was talking from other people's experiences. So I wrote this massive essay, and I thought I must have only got like maybe 25%, 30% or 35% out of the 40%. So you need a 40% mark to pass, or you have to do the reset. But somehow I passed the module. I got like 52%. I was like, well, the first half was 40%. So I must have got, let's say best case scenario, I got all of that right. I still would have just scraped it. I should have got 40%, but I managed to walk away with 52%. And obviously for a lot of people, that's really terrible. You know, it's not a lot. But for me to not have to resit that exam, he must have seen something in that essay and thought, screw this guy. Screw the system. I'm just going to mark this guy for what he's written. So yeah, it was really interesting. And yeah, so let's talk about that first. So how was the education system for you as you were growing up? Like, how was your experience with it?
Oh, mate. Well, I grew up in Stockport, so the schools we had around, like, so the schools around were like, you know, I had a good time. I enjoyed it. Just wasn't interested in learning. And it's so funny because I was just really just looking to, and I enjoyed being with people. Telling a lot of jokes, and yeah, like the educational part itself I was just doing what I was doing. I remember doing maths in, what was it, maybe year 4 or 5, and it's still to this day I've shut myself off from numbers just because it was never taught to me in a way that as a youngster I'd be like, all right, there's something in maths. And I think that's common though, innit? You know, if you're into something, you got it. I remember being next to my mate, he was a smart lad, Chris he was called. And he was writing this maths question down. I was like, oh, you know, you got the answers or whatnot. And have a little look. Anyway, I just copied the answer down. And it was wrong. And I was like, I don't think that's right. I thought the answer was this, but I thought, whatever. Anyway, he took his book to the teacher, and then I did. And she went, you got it the same wrong. You got it wrong as Chris did.
Right.
He went, did you copy him? I was like, no. Obviously I did. But I mean, I don't know why I'm talking about this now, but that made me reflect even at that point of not liking maths or numbers, because I didn't enjoy something, I'll just copy somebody else's wrong answer, even when I knew what the right answer was, because the way that we were taught it, or the interest towards it just wasn't there for me. And all the way throughout school, there was less. I remember, loved English, loved history, loved drama. These sort of sessions where I would be, there would be me in it, you know, not just sat and listening and going, oh, got to get through it. So yeah, I mean, it was, you're just going through it. Like, there's nothing in it. There were certain teachers that I remember to this day, and I'm grateful that I had. And I had my English teacher, Mr. Mack. He was very much like Robin Williams in the Dead Poets Society, and you know, I loved it. I loved how he taught English. And my history teacher, he loved it, and that made me love it even more. And yeah, there's definitely something in it. The majority of teachers were like, you know, they've no life in it. Yeah. And if I was to teach something, I was considering doing psychology or philosophy at uni, because I'd love to teach it, you know, with as much vigour and excitement as when we're having a deep conversation. It's like, there's life there. And I think that's how it should be if you're going to teach something to younger people, because there's a responsibility as a teacher to transmute, to exchange that information to someone, to give that information to somebody. Because if they give it to you wrong, I remember talking to a friend once, and he was saying he loved mushrooms and fungi, not like just the magical side, like actual fungi and mushrooms, and the mycelium and how they work within a forest.
They're deeply fascinating.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And he went to this lecture by this teacher, and he said after that lecture, never again, because it was so like, and here's what a mushroom does, and it reaches up. You know what I mean? If that's how somebody's telling you something, it's like, there's no life in it.
Yeah, we had a lecturer who was like that. We call him the fungi man. We had one lecture where he was really humorous, really humorous, and then I had a lot more respect for him because he got through he went through fungi. He originally went through like the microbe side, so tiny little organisms, and he wasn't really into that. He was more into the fungi. So when he said that, we call him the mushroom man. What was the toad from Super Mario? The mushroom.
He's called Toad.
He's got Toad. Yeah. So he's a toadstool, and so we used to call him the mushroom man, and he was just his passion for fungi and all these little things. You can see it; it's just literally bubbling out, and through that, you as a student, obviously, it becomes very contagious, and you want to pick it up. I remember that I learned more from YouTube videos than I ever did through the actual lectures, because through YouTube videos it was done in a way which was entertaining. Visuals, the audio, the sounds and stuff, I would pick up like 95% of the information off just watching the video once. And I was like, why is this happening? Like they always told me that I was more of a kinesthetic learner or something, and also largely visual as well. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, but then if that's the case, why is it that one delivery system is not ideal and then another delivery system is a lot better? And it's just how your brain connects things together. I think it goes back to, again, the experience. So when I hear a funny long title and I can relate it to something weird, like I remember from my childhood, I immediately remember it. There's a book called something to do with the sort of the mind mansion or something, where you associate, I think Darren Brown.
Rooms, Darren Brown objects.
Yes, there's a book that talks about it and how you can remember an entire essay or an entire book based on certain objects around your room, and you associate a particular phrase or a paragraph towards that object. And I found that really interesting as well. I was like, wow, I think that's how I learned to do it. So I used to kind of cheat in my exams, and this is going to be quite shocking for a lot of people, but I never used to cheat in terms of like writing things down. I used to write things in my hands all the time, but not like paragraphs. I used to write the first letter of each of my bullet notes. So let's say if I was doing something about my animals, so let's say chimpanzees, the first letter of each of the sentences of my notes, just the first letter, and I write that down as one line. It should be like a C, D, E, F, A, G, and then people were like, what the hell does that even mean? And it would trigger the entire information that I was retaining from that one line. But again, am I actually remembering the information in terms of, am I learning it, or am I just regurgitating it and remembering it in that process, using that the sort of the mansion in the mind to kind of associate particular things to the letter that it started off with. So I did it in that way, which was not the healthy way of doing it, because like I said, as soon as you walk out the exam, you only retain about 25%, maybe even 15% of all the information that you learned. So yeah. But then tying this in with the global situation, with what David Attenborough was saying, when he was talking on that documentary, it made me think about this. And I think a large portion of the problems that we're having is because of the education system, the way you're bringing these kids up. These kids are growing up not giving a shit about the environment, because it's all about, trying to gain as much as possible, whether that's through video games for guys, for girls, makeup, and Instagram and social media, etc. So it's all about, it's very much anthropocentric. So this is a term that I remember from university, where you describe the whole world's process, the whole universe revolves around human beings, and that's it, and how we think and what we want from the world. So through that process, we're just extracting as much as possible from the planet. And this is what David Attenborough was talking about, and is a big issue. And when he showed those figures, when he was...
Mate, every time that was coming up, that clip, and it was coming down, I was like, nope. When it was the animal wildlife left, every time that black screen come up and there was I was like, I don't want to watch it, don't want to see that bit.
Yeah. But it's that's the thing that needs to be shown to people. Like that data needs to be shown more often.
Yeah.
But it's also, we're so disconnected, and we've talked about it in previous podcasts. Most of us live in a concrete jungle. So most of us have never been in an actual jungle or a rainforest, and because of that, we don't have this understanding that the life that you see around you is a part of us. We mentioned before that half of our lungs are out there. So if we understood the world as that, and how we live in synergy with nature, and how the things that we kind of extract from nature also has a massive impact in nature as well. So looking at it in that way. So so what did you take away from the documentary?
Just the madness of humanity, really. Like watching it and seeing it. Where was it all going? First of all, diet, like food. We're just eating animals. And it's not about being vegan or being better than somebody else or being vegetarian. It's like, how do you keep life healthy, right? Stop. Well, you said it in such a good way was if it's not sustainable, it means what unsustainable means is it can't go on forever. It's got a limit. And the way that we do with the fossil fuels or eating animals, it's not sustainable. It has a limit. And once you break that chain, something else is going to give. I'm watching all the farming with the fish, the whales, got a big harpoon gun going out shooting whales. Like, what the
whale one was interesting because no one eats the whales. It's just done out of pure sport, and I'm like, what the hell's
madness, man? Like, what? The bit where they're in the Amazon jungle and they've got the palm forest, and he used it in such a good way. They're militantly set out, like order. We're trying to put order into the wild, and then you see how thriving the wild is. You've got that line of the militant trees, and then the actual rainforest, and how it's a bunch of all different species of trees, and how that makes it grow, and just how stupid we are as humans. And oh man, when I first went vegan years back, well, again, 24, 25, and everything kicked off for me, and I was pretty hardcore about it, and I've eased off dramatically once you realise it's not the way to go. You should be this and you should be that. It's not. But education and sharing is, or highlighting certain levels of stupidity, which is, I put a post out yesterday, and I rarely talk about food, or people shouldn't eat animals or not. There's no need to, especially because it's so, not that there's no need to, that's not true, but it's so popular to move towards vegetarian or veganism.
Yeah.
But without it being a social thing or a trend thing or an outcry thing, it's like, let's just look at what's better for the planet. Let's better for the world. Not what you taste out, not what gives you more protein, but what can you live on that's beneficial. It's plants. The amount of land that we were giving away because of factory farming, because of what we were doing in the seas, and how it, even the coral reef, all the farming of the fish, and the coral reef dies out, and they're going from those beautiful fluorescent multicolored fossils into dead and white, and it's because we want to eat fish and we're getting loads of it. Again, it's so not about be better because I'm eating animals or not. It's the world's gonna die because we want to eat that stuff. That's it. Yeah. If it was bread or something else, stop eating bread, or the world's gonna die, we'd probably still be doing the same thing. If it was doesn't matter what it is, because we're stupid and we're idiotic and we're selfish and we're so, no, it's my way, and it's all right, we're all gonna fuck each other over. We're literally gonna kill ourselves and kill each other because we don't want to realise it. The whole chain of things connected. Yeah. Down from the bees, all the thing about the bees, and all of it, it's all connected. And that documentary shows it so well. You mess with one thing, you're messing with all of it. And it's a massive upsurgence to see how all life is connected. I mean, we talk so much about humans being connected and the psyche and the collective consciousness and what that person's thinking I'm capable of doing. And, we're all just different elements of life. With life itself, getting to walk around and view other life. And we have to recognise that is our environment too. And what you've said is a massive part. We're in the concrete jungle where we're so separate from it. And it's all about our needs and our necessities and our quick fixes and our, even we talk about mental health a lot, which is vastly important. But we put everything onto our need. It's about me and where I'm at. And, well, if we focus on the whole world, your needs will become fine. Yeah, I believe, because everything is connected. Make the world healthier, make your environment healthier. And even on that conversation about help that we were having 2 podcasts ago, there's always one thing that you can help. And if you got to a healthy enough point, that circle will radiate out. You can help yourself. No matter where you are, you can help yourself. You can just eat a little better. You can go to sleep a little bit earlier, drink more water. I don't know. You can do something to help yourself. And the more you improve those things, that circle from you extends to maybe your housemate, and you can help that person just by being an example or just by talking because you're a bit more uplifted. And then maybe it's not just your flatmate, but it becomes your friend of circles, or it becomes your family. Maybe you go on to do TED Talks and you have a bigger sphere that you can influence without trying to, just by being healthy and happy. But at the very least, you've always got you. Bottom line, you're helping life by helping yourself.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's like it doesn't end. We're a part of it. Like, how can we continue to destroy it from whatever perspective, whether it's clothes that we wear, whether it's the food that we're eating? Like, it's not about your preference. It's about help life, because we're all going to be fucked, and we'll go to another planet maybe, which I think is ridiculous and stupid because we can't take care of this one. We're just going to take our shit and do it elsewhere. Yeah. Have you seen the Ad Astra?
No. Brad
Pitt movie. Quite a slow one really, but it wasn't the best. I was looking for a new Interstellar when it came out, didn't get that, but it was quite good for lonesome and figuring out your emotions and whatnot. Anyway, they go to the moon at a point, and it's like normal space travel. They get there and they arrive in a moon port. You get in and it's like a terminal. There's a Subway, there's a McDonald's, and it's like, is that what we want to take to other planets? Because we will, because we've not sorted this shit here. Like, we can't take care of this planet. Let's go get more resources and fuck somewhere else up.
Yeah.
It's the psyche that's going with us. Doesn't matter where we're going, it's coming with us unless we sort ourselves out.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point that you mentioned there. So, we were just saying this before the podcast. We don't have the ability to destroy the Earth or the planet. No chance. Like, the Earth has gone through a lot worse than we could ever throw at it. What we do have the ability to do is to destroy us. If you're a person that doesn't care about animals, doesn't care about the environment, about trees, whatever, you don't care about anything apart from yourself and your family, etc., you're going to destroy yourself and your family. That's it. That's the bottom line situation, because life will take care of itself. If it means that the whole of nature is stripped away because of us, that's fine with the Earth. The Earth will literally restore itself because it's gone through way worse, like I said. But it's our ability to save ourselves. So if we're thinking again in the whole anthropocentric way, which is it's all about me and it's all about how I see the world and it's all about my sort of desires and whatever, fine, let's start from that base. But the problem with that idea is you're just going to destroy yourself, your kids, your future generations. And it's really interesting how we don't even think about that. Forget the animals, forget life itself, forget all the plants and all the fishes, but you're thinking about your next generation, what your grandkids are, even even your children to a certain degree are going to be going through. There's no sort of selflessness there. It's all just selfishness. It's like, well, I only care about what I've got right now, and it's just consumerism. And it's something that David Attenborough did point out as the timeline was going on. He said back when the population was 2.7 billion in 1953 to 57, he said we were chopping down trees for luxury sort of furniture and all this without even having a care in the world. And his idea and his vision was to show the rest of the world these amazing creatures and these amazing ecosystems of in the nature, and to present it to people so then you can see it on your screens, to see what you are destroying and how what you've been told about nature before in that time and prior to that, it was all just, it was a lack of understanding. And again, it was just the ego kicking in and saying, nature will take care of itself. As long as we're stripping it away, it will grow back. But the issue with today's society and the culture we're living in is we're not even doing that. We're dumping our waste straight into the water. And just like you said earlier, I'm not really passionate or big about talking about these things. I mean, I can get into a passionate mood, like right now when we're talking about it, but I'm not an advocate for just saying you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. I feel like you will learn one way or the other, whether that's through radiation or whatever. You might suffer something as a result of your lack of care for nature, a lack of care for your own damn body. Forget, again, like I said to you, forget about nature, but the food you're consuming, like the shit you're consuming, I've said this to my sisters as well, like the shit you're consuming is going to bite you in the ass. It's already bitten your ass in a very small amount just recently, but it's going to bite you in the ass even more in the future. But this idea that, one life, one sort of, we might as well just live in as much pleasure as possible, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Like, I don't understand, and you've mentioned this before, and people might be quite annoyed by us talking about this again and again, but when you see like a fly or a spider crossing your living room, what creates the desire to go, I'm going to squish the shit out of that thing? I would understand if a mosquito's biting the crap out of you. The first one, there's an old Chinese, a funny saying of an old Chinese teacher who was sitting there meditating, and he had this group of people that were there, and this mosquito kept bothering him. So it bit him once. He looked at it and he was like, well, I'm a Buddhist teacher. I'm life, that's life, I'm not going to hurt it. So he goes back into meditation. He bites him again, another one bites him again. So he scratches it. He scratches the bite, and he picks the fly up, the mosquito, and then lets it go. The third one bites him, and now he's getting a bit more agitated. So if you think you have a calm mind, just go in an environment where there's a lot of mosquitoes and see how calm your mind is. But in that situation, I can understand. I can understand you saying, you piece of crap, I'm killing it, because it's done something to you. But when something hasn't even done anything to you, it's literally just walked past in your living room, and you have the inclination to go, I'm going to stand on it, I'm going to crush it. Like, where does that come from? Where does that destructive capability or that destructive nature come from? It doesn't make sense.
Man, that's such a powerful point to reflect on, just that alone. Like that spider, what comes up first? And, I'm not afraid of them, but it's like, oh, there's a spider. And years over the time, it's just been, it's fine, I can handle it, deal with it. And my partners, I've always had the same response. My girlfriends that have been like, get rid of the spider. It's like the repulsion. And it's a natural thing from evolution, for sure. But when you can stop and take that and like get a grip of that shit. So when you see that spider or the fly, just going, right, that reaction's there, fine, nothing wrong with that. Like, you look at why the reactions are there and go, okay, I want to step on that spider because I don't care about it whatsoever. And we believe it's not a significant impact. There's already a level of behaviour that's having a significant impact in you. The fact that you respond that way, that's where the impact is. Because you take that and you see something smaller that you think is meaningless, and that spider might not ever do anything. It might not massively contribute because it might just live in the house and just catch a few flies here and there. It might not contribute to the whole ecosystem. But what's vital is the fact that you see life that way. So you go, there's a spider. If I crush it, nothing happens. And I can do that without even caring because it's so minuscule to what I am, to who I am. Like Sadhguru says, you're a big man in a tiny little thing. Like, you're a big man in New York, but what about the world? What about the cosmos? And it's so true. It's like, you think you're that important, that means nothing. But it does, because the feeling is within you, and that's what deep reflection is, what needs to change. Those things that we don't even consider. It's just a response and reaction, but it's coming from somewhere. But a lot of it's fear-based, isn't it? It's like, I don't like that, get rid of it. It looks ugly, remove it. And how primitive are we if we're functioning on that level? And there's just something I wanted to add to when you said you were talking about to your sister about food and what they put in the body. This is the thing with COVID, right? Like, people, again, whatever side for, I'm very much in the middle. There's something out there. Wear a mask in the right place. Don't wear a mask if you've got the right, whatever. Like, you choose that stuff. I can't instruct anyone what to do. There's balance, right? But people who are so against the virus, they're so like, you should be doing this and take care of your health and think about others. Pull the mask down. Smoke a cigarette, drink a beer, put the mask back up. You're telling somebody else about health when you're doing yourself in by smoking, by eating junk food. But it's all about health, right? So this is the stupidity of the world that we live in, because we don't consider these other things. It's mass. It's, when you say that we're the world's an insane asylum, or we're being led, by people, it's a sick society, as Krishnamurti says. It's right, because we can't even look at that. We should all be healthy and looking after it. If you want to beat a virus or an illness, you fucking get healthy. You eat clean food, you exercise, you take care of yourself. That's simple. But we will push and poke things away and say, oh, you shouldn't be doing this and that. And then we'll be easily, purposely damaging ourselves because we want to. Just like the rest of the world, what we're doing to it. Comforts.
Yeah, it's going back to COVID, it's that stupid analogy of just, the fact that pubs are open before gyms. It just shows you what kind of mindset we, not just the government is one aspect of us, it's an extension of who we are. But the fact that we put these people in power, as much as people complain about the government, you've put that person in power. You might say, well, I didn't vote for that party, I voted for this party. Yes, but the point is, there's a collection of we have to get together. It's not just individuals, it's a group of people that vote for a particular person. So there's a group of people that are voting for the policies that the current government have been putting into place. So you've got to think about this in the deeper level. We're making that same stupid mistake over and over and over again, putting different faces on, and then complaining about who's doing what and what decisions are being made. You know, it's got to happen from deep within. That change has got to happen, and it's like, again, going back to that spine analogy, it starts from those tiny little things. And like you said, yeah, there is nothing wrong with thinking, oh God, there's a spider there and I don't want to touch it. I mean, I'm not a big fan of touching massive spiders because I don't want to end up ripping the leg off or something by accident. We don't understand the force of how powerful we are at the same time as, you know, if we compare it to the rest of the cosmos and the rest of the universe, we're tiny, but the force we have on the tinier things that exist is quite a lot. So it's taking the care that actually, how am I also getting rid of these little things as well. And Sadhguru mentioned one time in his talks, I think it was about his grandmother, who had an amazing connection with nature, and especially ants. So when she would make food, she would get rid of 65-70% of her food, and she would just feed the ants. And when she saw the ants happy and obviously consuming the food, she would have tears down her eyes, and people were like, this woman is crazy as hell, like, what's wrong with her? And she felt a certain sense of satisfaction from seeing these little creatures being fulfilled, you know, eating and having doing their little thing, because she understood that the whole understanding of who you are as a person isn't just about what's in your flesh and body, in this body right now. It goes beyond that. It stretches beyond that. It goes into nature. So when you see nature thriving, it also makes us thrive. There's a good analogy of this. Well, if you look at the universe and now all the chaos that's going on in this planet, and all the problems that we're having, it's a manifestation of what's happening on the inside. The stuff that we're polluting ourselves with in the inside, drinking Coke, drinking, you know, all these, eating fast foods, and then doing exactly the same thing in nature by polluting it and putting like fossil fuels out there, is exactly the same thing that's happening. Everything that's happening on the inside, the geometry and all this stuff. I watched an interesting video on YouTube about geometry and how everything on the inside also exists on the outside. So they say that the synapses, and if you look at the scan of the brain, it looks very similar to when you look at the Milky Way and the cosmos and stuff like that. So, and the brachyoli, the sort of the branching of the lungs and the alveoli and stuff, just like a fruiting tree. The alveoli is the fruit, and the branches in the lungs, you know, are the branching of the tree. So all this exists out there. It's just that we're not that tuned into it and saying, actually, that shit there exists inside of me. Just look at stuff like kidney beans and chestnuts. Chestnuts are good for the brain. They look like brains. Kidney beans are great for the kidney because they look like kidneys. You know, these kind of things that we literally just throw aside and we don't really give any thought towards. Stuff like that, if we start from that basic level, and it goes back to what we said at the start, education system, teaching kids that kidney beans, why should you consume kidney beans? Well, it affects your kidneys. It's good for your kidneys. Stuff like that. And I think Sadhguru's always mentioned it, that try and switch your diet from all about being cooked, all your food's being cooked and boiled and fried, to being live cells. So have them in their live form in terms of like fruit, vegetables. You know, you have live cells in there, and there's also hormones and chemicals that react with your body. Eat them in their raw form. You know, and you know straight away when a food is bad for you if you can't eat it in its raw form. For example, meat. You know, most meats you can't consume raw because it's damaging for the body, and we have to cook them to kill off most of the bacteria. Why do you think that's the case? Well, carnivores never have to cook their meat. Other creatures that are carnivorous, you know, like birds of prey, they never have to eat it cooked. There's a reason why they eat it raw, because their system is designed to eat it raw. You know, food that lingers in the belly. You've seen meat that's rotting for 3 days. Now, it takes a tiger 7 to 8 days to digest a deer or a catch, any sort of catch that it's caught. And through those 7 to 8 days, it's completely lethargic. It literally lounges around because it can't do anything else. And in that period of time, you can actually literally walk past it and it won't even attack you, because it just doesn't have the energy or the ability to attack you in that form, because they're still digesting the food. Same as pythons. Pythons, they have one meal every year. You know, 9 to 12 months, one meal, one big meal. And it takes that long to digest. You can actually see it in the python, whereas in the tiger you can't really see it because it's right inside. But with the python's belly, you can see this massive thing being digested, and the belly will start to shrink. You know, so things like that. You've got to look at the biology of the human being and see the intestines as being, they're longer and they're a lot thinner, which means that the foods that we're supposed to consume are supposed to get out of the system as soon as possible. Foods that linger in the body, for example, meat and stuff, they linger more than 72 hours. Look what happens to meat when it lingers outside for 72 hours. You know, we're putting that shit inside of our body, so it's looking at it in that way. The same as Coke. Do you drink bleach? No. So why do you drink Coke? Stuff like that, you know, we don't really think about. The only thing I think Coke should be used for is to clean your bathroom.
Yeah,
you know, it doesn't
seen those videos.
Yeah.
You clean car bumpers.
Have you seen the one where they chuck teeth inside of the? You've never done that as a kid. So you get a glass of Coke, and then when you've got, you know, a child that's teething and the tooth falls out, put it inside the Coke and see what happens in 24 hours. How rotten it becomes, and you're putting that inside of your body. So it's because we're not in tune with what's happening in the body, and it's what we drilled in the previous podcast. We're becoming so much more mechanical in terms of my gadget will tell me how many steps I've walked, how my gadget will tell me how many calories I've consumed, all this kind of stuff. It doesn't work. Intuitive eating, intuitive thinking creates a better world, you know, and as controversial as that might sound, it creates a better world because you start to realize, okay, if it affects me in this way, how is it affecting the rest of the world? So it's looking at it with that sort of lens.
It's seeing it that we are life, you know. I don't know how this gets across well. Like, is it an experience you have to have first rather than just saying it, we are life? Like, when we think that, oh, I'm Craig and you're Chet and you do this with your life and I do that with my day and it's like you forget that you're life walking around, and the massive separation, the big separational element from that is because we're not in nature, I believe. Like, when you are with the trees and you look at them, like, you can go for a walk and then nature go, oh, isn't nature great? Forgetting that you're a part of it. You are that. Like, your body is getting to walk around the whole world and life, and look at your life this is when I say it so often, but I mean it. Your life getting to look at life. What more of a greater invention can life itself create? You know, other than the limited amount of imagination I have, can't get to that point. But you get to look at life, and you can help it and be a part of it, and you can do like the destruction of it. If you want, you can do that. You know, we just do it senselessly and pointlessly without any need. It's not we're not destructing to create something new from it. We destruct because we're unconscious and we're oblivious and we're selfish because we're forgetting the element that we're life and a part of things. We think we're the person. When you can be both of them, you can be life and be who you are as a person and enjoy it and make it better for yourself. But we look so at the wrong things, whether it is the social media or whether it is our achievements, and, you know, even like the protein element, which I did. And you look at when I was hooked into eating so much animal meat and protein and whey shakes and all that, which is just crap food, really. You know, the meat's a good source of the vitamins and the minerals and the protein, but I was oblivious to the animals. In fact, even if somebody told me, I didn't care because I had a need to get big, to look a certain way, to have an impact on people, to make me feel a certain way. Fuck life. Craig wants to feel like that. Craig wants to look a certain way, you know, and because it's selfish. And that's an aspect of life. Like, wherever we are on that path, fine. Again, it's always coming, as you said so well there, like, you would like the government. It's us. It's us who are choosing that and doing that. It's not them pointing the finger. These are terrible people. These are bad. What about you inside? I know I've got all this shit still to work with. I know I've got my issues and troubles. And the world is going to see that as long as I have it. Do you know what I mean? And we have to do it within ourselves. The work is, that spider, don't crush it. Like, understand why you want to crush it. Don't feel bad that you want to crush it. Understand that it's there and work on it. And the whole world is reflecting it, and it's just madness that we're so blind to the selfishness of, like, I challenge anyone to watch that and not think, right, I should do something. What are my choices? I challenge anyone to watch it and not think, maybe I should do something a little different. Nothing about arrogance, nothing about being right or wrong, just fuck. This is what's happening to life because I'm choosing to buy that product. And that's it. That's it. You're cheap. Why don't you go and buy that instead? That's it. Just try it. Yeah. Like, it's us. We're doing it. We're doing it.
It starts from very basic levels of things, and it's like you said, it's a lower sense of identity. The fact that we're too identified with me and I and why everything has to revolve around me and my problems. And it's social media, again, you know, we bang on about it, but social media is, for me now, when I look at it, when social media first started, it was about presenting yourself towards people that you haven't seen in a long time, right? You haven't seen your mates from school for 10 years, 15 years, so it's just like getting in touch with them. Now social media is about looking like you are doing something. You know, it's like what we said before, where would you help a homeless person out if people weren't watching you, or would you help give to charity if people didn't see the numbers on your check, the amount of zeros you placed on the check, stuff like that. It's all about looking as though you're doing it. And it's the same as the fact that you were eating meat at those times. Again, it's not anything to do with morals and stuff, but it's the fact that how are you if it comes back to selfishness, how is it going to impact on you? But you were seeing it as how I need to get this nutrition, I need to get all this for my sake, so then people can aspire to be like me. And you just think, I even when you were saying it, it made me think about the way I was doing it, and I was doing it in a very ethical way, because I never had meat, but I was like, it was all about me and how I wanted the attention from people. And I'm just like, what a shit way of living. What a really callous way of living. And yeah, I feel sorry for people that are living in that bubble where it's just like, it's all about the grind, just trying to, the hustle of just trying to achieve.
Achievement.
Oh, yeah.
Achievement.
And it goes back to what Darshan said, and when I said this to Craig, because he hasn't listened to it yet, but in the previous podcast, he said he went into that ashram thinking that he was going from nothing to becoming something, and the monk turned around and told him that your job is to come here. You've come here as something, and you're going to leave as nothing. Your goal is to leave as nothing. How peaceful and tranquil the thought of being nothing is. Think about it right now. When you're nothing, you have no one to say, oh, what are you doing, or why are you doing this? No one to question you. You have no expectations of trying to live up to other people's expectations. None of that. It's just you deciding to do certain things. And now I've looked at everything I'm doing now in life. I'm just like, the climbing, the podcast that we're doing, the services I'm doing outside of what we're doing in these four walls, just everything is just like, it's trying to go towards nothing. And I'm like, that's such a relief. Like, I've gone about my life for the last 29 years right now, 30 next month, for 29 years of trying to be something. And all of the again, this will summarize all of our podcasts, but all of the self-help books that tell you be something, you're miserable because you're not something, it's a pile of shite. The ultimate goal in life is to be nothing, because it's so easy to be something. Craig, what do? I'm a breathwork teacher. I teach Kriya Yoga, and I teach Kundalini Yoga. I do this and that. How many layers are you putting on yourself? The hardest part is to peel all those layers away and say, Craig, who are you? I'm you. That'd be a really interesting response, right? But that is the aspect we want to get to. And that's what all of the Eastern teachings teaches. And it's so interesting how that side, and people must be thinking like, why do these guys always bang on about the East and never say anything good about the West? Well, the West has so many good things, but it gets overshadowed by the culture that we created right now, which is the consumerist culture, which is all about capitalism and trying to gain as much as possible. And everything you look at, just look at everything with an objective point of view. Every single thing you see in the West, everything, including the stuff that's done for the right reason, you look at it and you can see that it actually, again, is it the right reason, or is it done out of selfishness? Again, like we said, the self-development, the self-help, all this kind of stuff, you look at it and think, why are people trying to tell you to do this? Well, it makes them make more money, makes them more successful. And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with the system? The whole system's messed up. Whereas back in the days, when you went to school in India, you get chucked into an ashram. Yeah, so you get thrown into an ashram and you get taught by a teacher, and you don't have to give the teacher anything. The only thing the teacher wants from you is, when you grow up, to contribute in a tiny way towards his ashram, so he can continue teaching people, which I think is a fair enough sort of thing to give. He's not looking for success. He's not looking for accolades. He's not looking for any of that. He's doing it so then you create a society and a culture that is all about spirituality, to cultivate a spiritual practice. And I think this is something that Sadhguru has mentioned a few times, because a lot of people have asked him, as crazy as the world is, do you think we're going up, or do you think we're going down? And he said, well, we need to go down before we can finally go up. And he feels like the turn for the century has happened, and now we're on the way of going up. Yes, there are crazy things happening in the world, but they're making us realize that, what are we doing? Like the COVID situation, I still see a lot of people complaining about it, and rightly so. If it's affected you personally, you got something to complain about. But you can't complain about the whole thing, because there are so many aspects of COVID-19, this whole lockdown, even though it might be a pile of shite, and it might be all make-believe and all this kind of stuff, there's certain aspects that are positive. For example, slowing things down. The whole of nature has finally managed to take a deep breath in, because of how we've been forced to stay indoors. And is that not a positive thing? Why is no one talking about that? Well, it's all about me and how COVID's affected me in a negative way. And this is it. It's the perspective we're looking at. And the Western perspective is all about looking at it in a negative light. Look at the news. Look at everything that you're reading. It's all about looking at things in a very, very pessimistic light. Whereas the Eastern approach is, well, what can you extract that's positive? So, yeah.
A friend told me a story of her friend that had said she worked in what's the industry that's taking a massive hit? The bars and what's it called?
The service industry.
Yeah, bars and restaurants and this is just an example. I understand the sadness or the fear or the shock of my job might be going, but she was saying, it's ridiculous that they might be closing the bars and the restaurants again, to stop the spread of people mingling around. They should stop the schools and it's the kids. And I was like, wow, like that's probably one of the last lines we should get to, as to stop the education, even though we were talking about it earlier. You still need a less level of education. This is the system that we have right now. But her response was, because her line of work was in bars and restaurants, it's definitely not a necessity to go out and buy food from a restaurant or buy drinks, go out for a drink. It's like, I understand why that's there. People want the social element. It's 100% not a necessity, and it's not keeping you healthy anyway. But that's the attitude, is like, it's my job that's affected, and it's ridiculous that they want to close bars and restaurants. It's not. It makes sense, if anything. Cut off what's not necessary if we're going through this lockdown, and try and keep the necessity things open. Like the education, like the healthcare systems, like the NHS, like stuff that's needed. And there's being sensible within that. Like, if you're of a certain age, like our health, we could probably walk around and carry on with life and it's okay. We just wouldn't go to old people or vulnerable people, because that's just silly. Like, it just doesn't make sense to do it. Interestingly enough, Ab saw an old woman out, and she was at a restaurant. She looked like in her 90s, and she was with grandkids, and she was like, we were talking about wearing the mask thing and that. Like, if that's that woman's choice, she accepts a responsibility that she's not going to wear a mask. She's old, maybe she's happy with her life, and she would rather spend it with the family going out than staying in on her own and being lonely. And that's a choice, and it's unfortunate, but some people have to make difficult choices like that. What quality of life do they want to live if they've not got long left, or if they want to be with family more than they're actually bothered about staying away? That's the individual person's choice, When you have the sense to know that it's your choice to do, not everybody should be doing it. She then couldn't go out and go everywhere I go in public. People should be wearing masks in the streets and whatnot, or if you're in the countryside. So it's all down to the viewpoint of what's your effect on it. Not everybody else. What can you do, and what's the most sensible, supportive choice for everybody, that everybody wins. Where were we, man? Where were we before?
We're just talking about the whole lockdown and how it ties in with the egocentric approach, which is all about me. And
that's it. All about the self. Like, as we were saying with the gym and the fitness, I was literally putting myself to destruction, taking steroids, eating loads of meat, having negative effects, building my ego up, getting vainer and vainer. Where does that lead me? You eventually, these are parts of the path of, well, it's not to ridicule that side, because it brought me here. I got to see it, and I can talk about it. Yeah, there's a bit of fire and passion about me, which probably will be tapered down a little bit. This comes out when we talk, but it's seen that, both sides are fine, but just know that there's both sides, and what's the best way to be? What is the best way, in the sense, how does the most thing benefit? And it's running that mill a good few times, left and right, left and right, left and right, to go, okay, it's this middle path now, and this is what I'm going to do because it benefits more people. I've had enough of going into the self aspect of, what does Craig want to achieve? And these things, mentioning the Kundalini yoga or the breath work, like, when we're saying you don't have, you can become nothing, it doesn't mean you stop doing things. It means you're not trying to achieve doing those things for the self. It's, I might be interested in learning medicine, so I'll go into medicine to learn medicine because I enjoy it, and it might bring benefit. But you're not doing it for the achievement. Somebody messaged me the other day, a guy from, I think he's from India, and we've just been having talks on Instagram every now and then, and he's saying, he's having suicidal or depressive thoughts, and he said the most that he got support was from messaging me, and that's mad. What a shame, because I'm just some guy on the other side of the world who posts shit that I like to talk about on Instagram. That's it. Yeah. He was saying that. And I was saying, listen, man, when I get stuck in these situations, I always fall back to doing this practice, what I was talking about my week away, picking myself back up and clearing shit out. And just doing these meditation, breathwork, eating clean. And we were just having a chat, and he said, I don't know how to thank you, I'm so grateful. And I said, if you want to be thankful, just take care of yourself, just do your practices every day, that's it. And that will express gratitude, because what this person does is down to them in their life. I don't need him to come and tell me that, oh, thank you, you did this for me and that was great, or I don't need you to repost the message. It's a private conversation. I don't need you to post it. I don't even need to be talking about it, but I'm doing it for the example that you not searching for the achievement or the improvement of somebody else to say that you've done it. Where does that go? Like, nowhere other than to the ego and go, yeah, I can do this, or I'm changing things. It's like, even that, well, currently where I'm at, it's the theme for me. It's just staying away from all of it and being what my energy wants to be. Loves Kundalini yoga, loves breathwork, loves meditation, loves these conversations. So I'm going to do it. Try to be as conscious and as not picking a side as possible, but with expression. And that's where you're coming from nothing and being your life energy, you know, and allowing. And what somebody does or doesn't do based off what you've suggested or what you love doing, it doesn't matter whether they're into it or not. This is just me doing my thing. Do you know what I mean? And there's no ties or pulls to it having to have a particular outcome or somebody having to do whatever it is that you do for your life, because every single body is different on a different level of intelligence, different ways we study and learn, you know, different foods. But it's like, what's going to benefit the most? And where am I being selfish, and where can I open up more? And a really good quote that I like is, what is it that I'm not seeing? Even in the stuff you love, what is it that I'm not seeing? When I'm teaching Kundalini yoga, what is it I'm not seeing in this class?
Yeah.
When I'm doing breathwork, what is it I'm not seeing? You know what I mean? In those points of reflection, there's that spider that makes me feel afraid. What is it that I'm not seeing about the spider? Always. I'm like, wow, yeah, I like that. Hit me hard.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a friend of mine who went to a yoga course in Italy, and I don't know if she listens to this podcast, but I'm mentioning a story, but there was a wasp that was stuck inside, and the instructor that was doing the course squashed it. I'm like, you're teaching a yoga course, for God's sake. And one of the teachings in yoga is, the first teaching is ahimsa, which is, you know, non-violence. And you've just killed a wasp. I'm like, this is what the problem is. It's the very low level of thinking, and even selling products and stuff, it's a very low level of thinking. I get it, you know, the stuff that we do, let's say one day these podcasts make us money. All we're going to do with the money is just to make more podcasts and help more people out. And you know, for us, it's just the joy of the art of doing this stuff and just serving the world. And if people enjoy it, great. If they don't enjoy it, great. You know, it doesn't really affect us. But yeah, it's amazing. Like, a lot of people have been messaging me saying, you know, your podcast is really interesting. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm like, you know, don't mention it. We really don't. Literally don't mention it, because we don't really think about these kind of things. It's just literally having a conversation like we normally do. This time we just got a couple of cameras and a mic in front of us, and yeah, whatever we're saying, if it helps people out, great. If you want to, it's
nice, and it's a nice feeling that it helps people, but it can't be done for that, because then it becomes something else then. Yeah,
and that's when you start bringing the ego into it. But it's amazing that you said that, where you have to recheck that. Okay, how is this practice? You know, I've just finished this practice of this class with people, and they've loved this class. How does it make me feel? And now I just feel a sense of like emptiness. I look at Alex Honnold, the guy that climbed Yosemite, the sort of El Capitan, and his documentary got an Oscar. So he got invited to the Oscars, and he's wearing a tuxedo. Weird to see Alex in a tuxedo, and his hands were full of chalk, and they were like, How do you feel about the documentary? And he was just like, it's good for the documentarians. I haven't done anything. And he goes, so what were you doing? How come your hands are full of chalk? He's like, I went to the climbing centre before I came here, and I'm thinking of going back when these Oscars have done. I'm like, that's such a good way of living. The fact that, and you know, some people don't like his attitude, even in the climbing community, because he has this very nonchalant attitude of just like, you know, just the way he reacted after climbing that massive sort of 3,000 foot climb, and he was just like, you know, and that attitude for me is like, wow, that's where we should be in life, which is doing it purely for the joy of doing it, you know, and again, not being too caught up in pleasure, like too overly excited in pleasure and too miserable in pain. Just being that middle path, and just, you know, when people say going to that middle path, it becomes very sort of spiritual or woo-woo. It's like, oh, you know, when someone pokes you with a pin or punches you in the face, you just like, nah, it doesn't affect me. It's not about that. It's the fact that it, in the grander schemes of things, someone punching you in the face or someone poking you with a pin, it doesn't make a massive difference. You know what I mean? I'm not saying people should go around doing that, but in the grander scheme, in that moment in time, you might react and think, you piece of crap. And you want to punch the crap out of that person. But in the grander scheme of things, it's stopping yourself in realizing that, okay, if I react and probably poke this guy with a knife or something, or punch him harder, or smash something on his face, how is that going to impact me in the grander schemes? How is it going to impact this person? It's thinking about it in that way. Just like basic stuff like, driving and wherever you are, any sort of situation that makes you feel a bit hot under the collar. And even just the stuff that we've talked about in terms of the environment and stuff. And people say, well, you banged on enough about the environment, and there's too many people banging on about not consuming meat, and now everyone's against, people that eat meat. No. It shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't have to push your message down someone's throat. You say what you need to say. You carry on doing your own stuff. You try and do what's best for you. But then let everything else take care of itself, and let people have the opportunity to do that. And this might contradict everything that we're saying, but what we're saying is, do that as an individual, but at the same time, if you're the individual that's doing the opposite, which is consuming meat, doing this and that, think about it. Just think about what you're doing. Maybe even go for a week, or like we said, we mentioned about fasting on this podcast a lot. Fasting for words, fasting like in terms of not saying anything, like in terms of speech, fasting for food, fasting for so many other things. Sometimes you just have to take a break to realize, how is it affecting me? And I think, like what you said to the Indian lad, that all you did was you went away for a bit, you self-reflected, and you just needed to clear out all the baggage to go back to life again. So that's all it takes, I think, sometimes. Like, people just need words of encouragement. Some people just need a physical hug. That's all they need. And that's what we should be here for. As a human race, that's what our job is. So, yeah. Yeah,
so everything grows, man, in coherence and correspondence and cooperation, all the colours. It's when life thrives and works together. It's the isolation and the loneliness which is coming from the mind, or not being nurtured in the correct way when we were in somebody else's care, but then taking responsibility for where we are now. Like, if you need that hug or you need a good word, it's like, I need a good word. I need somebody to pick me up, and recognising that. I've very much been on the side of, I can get everything from myself. Like jumping the gun and knowing that comes much later on. There was times when I needed a hug, or I needed to talk to somebody, or I needed to be straightened out, or whatever it is. Like,
and some people need a slap as well.
And sometimes you need a slap. Yeah, it's true, man. It's like whatever the medicine. How does the doctor administer the medicine? Is it sugar coated in a sweet? Is it bitter taste, or is it injected and forced? Like, we all need a different kind of medicine at different times, and this is why self-reflection and self-awareness is the only work in life, because the more you become aware of what you are, not who you are, yes, will take you to what you are if you follow it enough eventually. But when we just look at who I am as a person, and I need to do this and I should do that, like, when you're going into what you are, it's way more powerful. Like, if we can get in that way, it's right, why am I alive? Why is life alive? Why are the planets spinning? Why is it orbit? Why is this stuff that's incomprehensible and stuff that you will not ever have an answer to? Can you accept that? And that's where you kind of find it. I'm alive. Like, I'm a bit of life that's getting to do all this cool stuff, and I can really sabotage that and have my aggressions and my problems with the whole world without reflecting at what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? And like, what do I want to see in the world? Well, okay, do I have that within me first before I start pointing that finger out and got these 3 fingers pointing back to me while this one's pointing at everyone else? Like, what am I doing? Do you know what I mean? Then this is where it is. It's just because we look at the achievement of being seen or thinking, the education system again, this much money, get this job, live this life, pressure from parents, pressure from other people. There isn't life there yet. It's in a system. It's in a decoy. It's in a fake. It's the Matrix. It's a shell. And getting out and either going for quiet time or just getting in nature. If you were to put yourself in nature, or even a holiday, right? I mean, holidays are they almost defeat the purpose of what they go for, because people let go in a holiday and they go too far and they just go to drink and eat, like, and that's a holiday. Like, yeah, like, if you, all that's doing is relieving pressure of the system and putting yourself into that relief of drinking or eating and going for fun. But there's still no sort of reflection in that. It's like, I feel better because you're away from the usual system, but into another defunct system that's telling you to let go, but in a negative way. While it's like, if you get to go out in nature, or you spend a week off work at home and eating clean and doing the things, you're going climbing, doing yoga, you exercise, playing games, whatever, chilling out a little bit, whatever makes you feel good, as long as it's majority in a healthy percentage, you just start to feel like, how do you feel like that all the time? how do you bring more of that into your life? Maybe you need to change your job. Maybe you don't want to admit it. Maybe you need to leave your partner. You don't want to admit it. Maybe you need to work a little bit harder to save up money to do that thing you want to do a little bit more. Like, whatever it is, the answer is going to be there that you will find out, which will take stress and burdens pushed from the system and pushed from life, not from life, from the system that we have around us of people and things. Getting into nature is the best way, because you are with those trees. You're not separate from your environment. If you're with somebody who's talking shit all day and they're negative and they see problems and then they just watch Coronation Street and then you're back onto it and then you're in a job and they're gossiping about other people and you get some kind of thrill from that, because if somebody gossips, I feel it in me go, oh yeah, let's have a little bitch about that person. I want to join in, and I'm like, hold on, I've done it and I feel like shit. And it's like, catch that, because that feeling like shit or feeling crap later is what's causing these issues, that we keep feeding these things that aren't of any benefit, that are creating more self and more comparison, because that's all we're getting when we're talking about somebody else. If they're not there and it's not from a constructive manner, it's that person does that and I don't, you know what I mean? It's like, what does that lead us to? Nothing, just more separation of I'm an individual and I'm this person and I'm going to bend the world to how I think it should be, rather than going, what if I just stop trying to achieve that achievement or trying to be seen that way? Well, maybe they won't have a sense of identification, and then what? Eventually you become nothing. And we're afraid of being nothing because I won't get any rewards from it, I won't get any praise, or I can't grow or be seen a certain way, or maybe my parents will look at me because I didn't achieve what they wanted me to achieve, or whatever it is. That is all minor. It's not real stuff. Like, it's going to have an emotional and a mental effect. Yeah, it is, because we have to develop to the point where it doesn't. Like, it will do at the start, and we accept that, and it's gonna be a hell of a long time to get off that pressure, especially with parents and religion and groups and social structures. That's why social media is the danger, because it fuels that aspect of ourselves that makes us think, shit, I should be doing something else, and I can't do that, because you're going to be swimming upstream, but it's 100% worth it, because you'll find that freedom and you'll be able to do what you love without any pulls about whether it's right or not. And the freedom's there, like, and then you can breathe, and then you're a part of life, and then when you are nothing, you're carrying this energy around. It's healthy and healing, and you'll want to look after insects and animals and other people and eat clean without trying. Like, I know, I've seen it, I've done it time on, time off, and I come back to it and it's like, oh yeah, it's there when I've let go of everything, and your problems just disappear, and the bad habits just disappear, and the good things just come in on their own. When you're just life, when you're just nothing, it all starts to happen.
Yeah, so that thing that you mentioned about what you are is interesting as well, because you can also look at it in a very negative as well, which is what you are is, again, your very low sense of self. And a lot of the issues today are all about, the mental aspect of the self, is because of the stuff about transgender, the movement of transgenderism, homosexuality. No one, Sadhguru says it, he goes, I don't care what you have in your pants. Whatever you have in your pants is your doing, your responsibility, whatever you want to call yourself, whether you identify yourself as a girl, boy, a she, he, whatever. But the point is, we make that such a big issue in today's culture. It's all about transgender rights, and it's all about homosexuality for the LGBT community, this and that. I'm just like, these sort of things are very trivial issues. We've only made these issues a big thing because we're so focused on what people have in their pants, and it's a big problem, because as soon as we eliminate that issue and we move away from, again, it goes back to why me, and it's a lower sense of identity again. Like, we're so identified with the biology of our body and who we think we are in the mind. That's why it's messing us up so much, because we're just so focused on that. And if we try and see life and see, going back to the positive side to what we are, is we're with life, we're living with life, we're in synergy with life, we're part of life. And if you teach a child, going back to the education system, instead of teaching them who they are and then telling them who they are, teach them what they are and tell them what they are. You're flesh and bone. You came from the earth. You're gonna go back into the earth. Plants and life will thrive off your dead carcass one day. Stuff like that. You start to look at the perspective of what we're holding back in the kids. Oh, we don't tell them about death. Going back to the death podcast, we don't tell them about how to look after themselves in terms of financially being responsible with substances that they're taking, alcohol, etc. If you want to drink alcohol, you drink alcohol, but it's all about responsibility, and whether you're doing it out of indulgence because you're trying to suppress certain things and you're trying to escape, or are you doing it sheerly out of the pleasure of doing it, which is a different thing. So I completely agree with that. What we are is a very interesting thing, and again, it might come across like we're being like transphobic or whatever, homophobic, but it isn't. I'm saying that I don't care. Like, we don't care. We care in the sense that if it's costing your life and it's causing you miseries and stuff, that's a problem. But in the sense that if you say to me, I want you to refer to me as a female and you're a biological male, I don't care. I call you a female. There's no problem there. But it's just becoming so identified with that, saying you must do this. And like the amount of people I've seen now, there's a whole movement that now people are putting their sort of preferred pronoun on their Instagram page. Like if you're a male, you have to put he or him. Just like there's no need for it. There is no need for it. You don't need to shove it down people's throats, because that just causes more anger and frustration that you're doing it in this such a negative sort of way of doing it. It's it's the whole concept of pessimism and optimism, and you're going with such a pessimistic or nihilistic outlook, which is we have to do this or no one recognizes. It's a terrible way of doing it. There are greater things to worry about in the world. Let's not worry about these tiny little things.
It's a really interesting point. Sorry, man.
No.
It's a really, really great thing to discuss. And it doesn't just have to be in regards to the transgender movement or the pronouns or what everybody wants. I think Jordan Peterson does a really good job of summing that up. Because that is what even those people who aren't struggling with that identification issue are struggling with identification issues in, do I look good enough? Is there enough numbers on my Instagram like page? That's identification to say I'm valid and I'm worthy. Not even worrying about what genitals they've got or what they want to dress like. We're doing it in a made up world, do you know what I mean? And that isolation of the pronouns and that community is we just really pinpoint identification. Why? Like why? And I'm not saying why in a negative or a positive way. Why? Why do we need that identification so much? Are we unheard? Are we afraid to speak it? Do we need to be known as being a certain thing? And look at the fitness industry. Like this example is just coming now, but look how masculine I am. Look how big my chest is. I'm going to stand on stage while you judge me that I'm feeling that masculine. Do you know what I mean? Like that, is that not the same thing? Yeah. Is it we're looking for that pinpoint identification of what I am? Because I'm not happy with what I am, so I've got to show it out in a certain way. Now, if you're doing that, I'm on stage and popping my muscles out because I fucking love this shit, and it jacks me up and I get a feeling from it. Different thing. Different thing. It's knowing where we're coming from. So I really, really like that example, and it must be really difficult for people going through that transgender and not sure of where the sexuality's lying in, or if it needs to, can it be fluid? Whatever, as long as it's not doing damage and no decisions are rushed into, because that can be very, very dare I say the word fatal, because I've seen suicide rates for people who've made a change and then because it's permitted too early by doctors and they've given them hormones and they're at a young age where they're not sure anyway with certain people, and it's like, wow, the world's in a tricky place when we're struggling for identification even without those gender issues. It's the same thing.
It's looking at the similarities, if we look at the world in similarities in terms of what you and I have in common, we have more things in common than we have differences. You've got flesh, I've got flesh, you've got eyes, I've got eyes. You do
have brown flesh though. I'm not sure what I feel about that brown flesh. Exotic.
But that's what the issue comes from. It's because it's instead of looking at what we have in common and not seeing it as a comparison, and looking at things that are different in you and I and not seeing it as a comparison, then once we start doing it in that way where we look at it in a comparison and it's like, oh God, I wish I had brown skin, or God, I wish I had black hair or thick hair, this is where the issue comes from. It stems from, again, a very low or very small sense of identity of who you are in regards to the rest of the cosmos. It probably sounds annoying for people for us to keep saying this and for people to listen to this, but it's just the fact that we when you go beyond that, even a tiny bit, so let's say you step out of that, that realm of looking at yourself in such a low way, and you just glimpse, maybe you go to a yoga retreat, or you go to a breathwork class or something, and that makes you question something about you, think, oh, whoa, what was that experience? Originally I didn't want to go into it. Like my friend Jade, shout out to Jade again.
No, she got two there.
She loves the shout outs. This was a late one as well. Quite late into the podcast, so hopefully she sticks around for it. But her first breathwork class, she was terrified. Like, she was absolutely terrified, thinking that what's this kind of crazy cult thing going to be like? And she walked away thinking, I don't know what to think of it. And I said, it's because you came in there with a certain expectation, a certain outcome, and you were scared of going into the unknown, scared of being nothing. You know yourself as something, and you're scared of being nothing. But as soon as you go through that, you realize actually being nothing is actually liberating, and it's, all the weight of the world is off you compared to being something. So if you're stranded on an island in the middle of nowhere, and you don't have society to deal with, you don't have anything to deal with, but the only thing you have to deal with is you and nature, and you living with synergistically with nature, then you don't have any pressure on you apart from just surviving and enjoying your day. That kind of stuff. I know it's very extreme situations, but I feel like the step forward is to start doing what the East was doing many years ago, which is teaching the spiritual aspect from a young age. Bring these kids up, questioning them who they are and what they are in terms of how related they are to other people, and how related they are to nature, how important they are in regards to how they look after nature and how they see nature, these kind of things. If we teach it from that stage instead of teaching it in a very poor system, so we have a poor education system, as much as we still deal with it, it's still a very poor system, and it's something that was based on the post-industrial revolution. It's the fact that we wanted people to have jobs for like accountants, business jobs, lawyers, etc., and those jobs were all occupied afterwards, so they didn't know what to do with the kids. So we just thought, we'll just chuck them in university, increase the fees, and make them do the same jobs, make them fight for the higher positions. So we've had this right from the start. We've created this for at least 100 years now, and we haven't done anything to change it. So, and I'm not saying drastic changes in the system, but changes in awareness of the system, of how you want to teach the kids and where you want to take society. So it's always about looking forward and projecting in the forward and saying, how do we want society to behave in the future, instead of saying, we're just going to go on a whim and let society, that generation, deal with themselves in the future. And we've got into this situation, this mess right now, because we didn't foresee any of these things. We didn't foresee, and I get it, certain things you can't foresee, because stuff like social media really changed everything. The direction we're going completely got shifted because of social media. If you think about two worlds that exist in parallel, if one world is what we're in right now in terms of social media, and one world didn't have social media, it never evolved, where would we be there in that life? And it makes me wonder, we took a really bad turn, and it wasn't the fact that it was because of individuals that create social media, Mark Zuckerberg and all this, that the environment was there to create someone was going to create it. I think there's a saying that, if it's a poor saying, but in the scientific world, it's like, if I don't do this, then someone else will after me. So, if I don't discover this particular thing, even though I know it might exist, that someone else will after me. And again, it goes back to the ego of thinking, I want to get this achievement. So, and someone else might do it worse than you. So I do understand that perspective as well, to a certain degree, but we've done this to ourselves in terms of the social media thing, and people like Mark Zuckerberg will only come about because we were moving towards that direction. It's done now. We have to reflect and think, how do we want the future generation to behave? Well, we want our future generation. We know social media is bad, and if kids spend a lot of time on social media, what the repercussions because of that. So how do we want to deal with the education system to tackle that issue? Well, we'll cut the amount of social media, or we'll just say, kids coming into school, no phones allowed, leave them in the drawer.
Simple.
Stuff like that, tiny little things like that will go a long way. And it's a mass scale thing. It's not just a tiny little thing. Do it as a national sort of curriculum, as a rule of thumb. Any public school that a child gets sent to, their phone, you tell them no phones allowed. First of all, if you have to bring a phone because of emergency and stuff, fair enough, but that phone is going in the teacher's cupboard, and if there's an emergency, the teacher will check every hour or whatever after every lesson or whatever. But there has to be something that we need to project in the future to say, this is how we need to do it. Instead of just saying, the planet's going to hell, we should all just kind of now stop doing this and stop doing that. It's good that you should start at the individual level as well, but also we have to do it as a society, because we are living together as a society. So yeah, setting things in play in the future, I think, is the way forward. Yeah,
I think it's a Rumi quote. It might not be Rumi, and it's not the wine's fault that you foolishly get drunk and stumble. And it's not. Can you blame the wine? No, it's the person choosing to drink the wine. And that's it with technology. We're still stumbling around with it, drunk on it, and thinking, oh, it's having a great time without realising the effects of it. Well, we know the effects now. Yeah. We know the effects. And it's what do we choose to do with the society now moving forward, because it's starting from here. Wherever we're at now, we can complain and moan about, the environment and the social media, but what are we doing now? Because this is it. This is where it changes. If we want it to. And something that's going to be pretty received controversial is these parents with kids or with their friends and family, or what you think about society. Krishnamurti says you don't love them. You don't love your kids. You don't love your parents. You don't love your society. Because if you did, you would becoming non-violent. You would practice removing all these things that are causing damage and pain. Because if you say you love a kid, you're going to put his hand on the fire. No, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself because you love the kid and you don't want them to hurt yourself. But they're all right to pick up the phone and be distracted by YouTube or whatever. Where is that boundary of love? And it's maybe a bitter pill to swallow. And I'm not in that position to know what it is to be a parent, but I know what it is with friends and family and people around me, or how society is. I can sit and talk like this. If I'm not doing anything, what use am I? What good is it? And it's really, you show the love by going all the way out and having the conversations and trying to do it to the best of your abilities that you can. Because, if you were to say that you don't love your kid, because why do you allow that to happen? Well, probably my own laziness or my own ignorance or whatever the reason is. Let love overtake it, and if you are into pure love, it will all change. It will all change. I wonder what people think about that. But I remember when I first heard that talk from Krishnamurti, if you did love your family and your kids, there'd be no war, there'd be no fighting, there'd be no selfishness, because that's what love is. Love has none of that. Real love has none of that. We only glimpse love here and there. Yeah. And a lot of it's because we receive something, and that's not love. I'm with this person because they treat me nice. That's not love.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the other thing you can tie in with that is gratitude. A lot of people talk about gratitude in the morning. People have gratitude practice and meditation. The ultimate form of gratitude is action. We can talk about it, we can reflect on it and be like, thank you, God, or thank you, universe, or thank you, I'm grateful for my situation. But the greatest form of gratitude you can ever perform is action from that. The best thing you can do is now serve the world and say, this is how I'm doing it. Not in a very egotistical way and say, look, this is how I'm doing it, check me out. I mean, do the damn thing without any sort of, do the dirty grind itself and show the world forward that this is how it's done forward. So as parents, if you've got kids, start from the amount of time that you're spending on social media. Start from what you're doing with your sort of the foods that you're consuming. Start from what kind of things you're consuming on television and what you're indulging yourself in. Start from your own job. If you want your child, every parent says, I'm working my ass off and I'm grinding myself down so then my kids can have a better future. But you're teaching that same, system to your kids. The kids grow up watching you and thinking, this is what the work life is like, and then they go through the cycle and they teach their kids that. It's a vicious cycle until one generation says, enough is enough. I'm going to, and this is where we get the rebellious generation. I think I'm the rebellious generation from my side of the family, but it's the fact that it's like enough is enough of the whole 9 to 5. For me, it was the whole 9 to 5 system wasn't going to work for me. So someone in the generation has to say, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to take a stance on this. I'm going to go a different path. And it's better if you're the parent that does that. So the kids look up to you and say, wow, look, my dad or my mum's doing this. And especially when you're taking your kids into, when you're taking your parents into like the school when the parents' evening or whatever, and you got the kids at the front of the room describing what their parents do, stuff like that. It's showing the world what you can and what you want to do, and showing the next generation how it's done. And I think that is the way forward. And again, like I said, it's not done in an egotistical way where you have to show the world on social media that you're actually taking action, when in actual fact all you're doing it is for recognition, stuff like that. That's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah, I think even those, the parents, cause, my mum and dad worked really hard, and to support us and the house, they wouldn't be able to stop. You had to work their asses off to do it. But they would teach, especially my mum, she'd teach, do what you want in life. And she would say, don't do it this way because it can be very difficult. do what you want. And that was imbued in me. Like, they were grinding, you know, and they weren't the generation who's like, work hard and grind and hustle, you know. That wasn't a thing in there. It was just they work hard because they're industrial revolutionists. It was bred into them to work hard. But she was very aware enough to say, it doesn't have to be this way. Do what you want to do with your life. And grateful for that, you know, because they could see the trap that they were in and didn't want that to continue. So there are people who are in it too, but can also have the awareness and not say you should be like this. It's like there are options, you know, and even having the openness to be able to have that discussion, something good, right?
Yeah, definitely. Right, I think that's a great place to wrap up. We've gone on long enough about this stuff, but we mentioned, I think in this podcast was an interesting one because we tied everything in and we tied it into how we're affecting the world, the nature, the environment, and how we can make an individual change and we can also make a societal change. So yeah, it was a great podcast. Any more last words? Or is that it?
We'll mix up the intro next week.
Yeah, I forgot about the introduction. Maybe we need a sick outro.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, right, this was podcast number 30. Usual spaces, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Instagram. I think that's pretty much it. I think there's a couple other platforms, but no one listens to those platforms or watches it, so it doesn't matter. We'll see you in the next one, guys.